I've got a day shrimp in this tank. I think I saw it in that corner somewhere. Oh, not again. Two of you today. Why you keep dying? What's wrong with you guys? Why do shrimp die? If your shrimp die, you're not alone. They die on me as well, even after many years of experience in this hobby. They are very delicate creatures and there are lots of reasons why they might die. So today we're going to talk about the most common reason why shrimp die in your aquarium. Let's start with reason number one, and it's wrong water parameters. It's a very common mistake among the beginners when they buy the shrimp without any research. I don't blame them. I did exactly the same thing when I started this hobby. I just bought a few shrimp and I dumped them in my fish tank and they won't live for very long there. So there are a few different aquarium shrimp species and they thrive in different water parameters. For example, Caridinia shrimp, they prefer salt water with a low pH, and Neocaridinia on the other hand, they prefer like a more hard water with a higher pH. So do your research before you get your shrimps and make sure that you have the right water parameters for them in your tank. The reason number two why your shrimp die is the high temperature. The shrimp are very sensitive to high temperatures and they might start die if it's too hot for them. Caridinia shrimp are the most sensitive to the higher temperatures. Ideal temperature for them is between 20 and 22 degrees Celsius, and they might start die if the temperature is above 25 degrees. And of course, Neocaridinia is more hardier shrimp, is not as sensitive as Caridinia, so they can survive in high temperature, and I would say they would be okay in the temperatures up to 29 degrees Celsius. So keep an eye on your tank temperature, especially in the summer when the weather is quite hot, and invest in aircon or at least just to buy a fan and make sure your temperature won't go above the temperature I just mentioned before, otherwise you might start losing your shrimp. The reason number three is fast changing in water parameters or water temperature. Shrimp don't like any changes, so if you change the water parameters, be it GH, pH, KH or temperature, the shrimps won't be happy about that. So when you do your water change, make sure you don't do it too fast and always drip your new water into your tank slowly, and make sure that your new water has more or less the same temperature and similar water parameters with the water in your tank, and always slowly drip acclimate your shrimp before you put them in your tank. And reason number four is toxic soil. Before I start making this video, I watched a bunch of other videos on YouTube on the same topic just to see what other people are saying about why shrimp dying in the aquarium, and to my surprise, nobody mentioned about toxic soil, but the toxic soil actually is very common reason why your shrimp might die in your aquarium. So let me explain what is the toxic soil is. So if you have a thick layer of soil in your tank, eventually all the waste such as little food particles, dead plant matter, shrimp poop, everything is get into your soil and make your soil quite toxic. And at some point, normally in several months, it might take up to 1 year depending on your thickness of your soil, these toxins can build up and get very close to the surface of your soil, and this is when they become very dangerous because they basically can poison your shrimp. It's also quite important not to pull out any rooted plants in your shrimp tank, because when you do that, a lot of toxic soil might get into your water column and poison your shrimp. Normally you're gonna get more buildups in the area where you feed your shrimp. The shrimps are very messy eaters, and when they eat, they break their food into their little particles, and a lot of them sink down to the bottom of your soil where they're gonna create toxins. That's why it's very important to use feeding dish in your tank, because feeding dish will prevent some of the food get into your soil. But instead, I prefer to create a large feeding area at the front of my tanks with only thin layer of soil to completely avoid these buildups. The reason number five is bacterial infection. This is really the worst possible thing that can happen in your shrimp tank. The bacterial infection can wipe out your entire colony of your shrimps within a week, and there is almost nothing you can do about this. That's why you have to avoid it at all costs. It happened with me like once or twice in the past, and it's actually happening right now at this particular moment. This is the main reason why I decided to make this video, just to share this with you guys. So first, let's talk about symptoms and how can you find out if you have bacterial infection in your shrimp tank. So your shrimps become very weak, very inactive. Most of the shrimps start to hide, and not many come to eat when you start to feed them. And the shrimps who come to eat, they're not gonna attack the food, they're not gonna fight for the food, they're gonna eat very slow. And of course, shrimps start to die a lot, and when it's happened to me, I've normally found like 1 to 3 dead shrimps every day. That's insane. It could be really depressing. Imagine if you only have one shrimp tank, and if it's happened to you and you lose all your shrimp, it's gonna be really hard to find motivation to continue this hobby. So now let me tell you the story which just happened to me. I have a very big issue in one of my tanks with my black galaxy shrimps, and the issue is that the shrimps start to die without any reason, and I already lost a lot of shrimps from this tank. few days ago I added this filter which has some purigen and some activated carbon inside, and I was hoping to kind of clear all the toxins from the water, but it didn't help. The shrimps continue to die, and I probably lost already like third of the colony from this tank. So I give up and I decided to move all the shrimps from this tank, just because I'm sure they're gonna die, and they're all here in this jug. You can see them here. So I probably have about 40-50 shrimps left from about 100 shrimp. So there's a lot of them died. I still have a few sick shrimps here in this tank. Let me just touch this one. You can see it's still kind of alive, but it's very weak. It doesn't react on my touching. This one I think probably completely dead. So you can touch them, they're not gonna go anywhere. So, and they not swim very well. And this shrimp probably the same. Yeah, you can see they still react on my touching, but they don't go anywhere. So this is what happened with the shrimps. I think it's a bacterial infection, so they become very weak and very sick first, and then they're gonna slowly die. Some of them I can see they're not very active, so I'm gonna move them into this tank, which is my recent tank. And there's no problem in this tank. I have a very active shrimps here. This is my nursery tank, which with a lot of babies. The babies grow up a little bit, and I think the shrimp's gonna be okay in that tank, I hope. Then I added a few fish in that tank with bacterial infection, just to quarantine it for a month or so with the fish. For the first few weeks the shrimps were doing okay in the new tank. Maybe a couple of them died because they have been probably sick already, but after about 1 month, sadly I noticed the same symptoms in this tank. The shrimps started to become weak and die daily. This is when you saw me taking 2 dead shrimp from this tank at the beginning of this video. Maybe it's a coincidence, but I really believe that I transferred this infection when I moved this shrimp here. I didn't want to do the same mistake again, so I decided to catch all the remaining shrimp and move them back into that 50-liter tank with the fish, which had been quarantined for a month already, and I was hoping that the bacterial infection had gone by then. So now it's been 2 weeks since we moved the shrimps from this tank where we had bacterial infection to the tank just behind me where we used to have bacterial infection. Hopefully no more bacterial infection in that tank. So now let me just give you a quick update and show you the shrimp. Alright guys, so this is our tank, this is our shrimp. And you might have a question, do they still die in this tank? Yeah, I'm afraid they do. I just found a 1 dead shrimp today. And last time I found another dead shrimp 2 days ago. You see, I just feed them. I think they're still a little bit weak, and they're suffering from this infection still. I don't know if this tank still have bacterial infection or if the shrimp still just kind of sick from another tank. I'm not sure. Hopefully the shrimp's gonna get better. I can see some improvements so they don't die as much as before. Maybe because not many shrimps left here. But anyway, I'm gonna leave the shrimps alone. I'm not gonna do anything else because I don't want to move them in the healthy tank and I don't have any spare tank. So now let me quickly show you this 90-liter tank where we had bacterial infection. So there's no shrimps anymore here, but we have some fish here. So the idea is the same. I want to quarantine this tank with the fish. Hopefully it's going to help to get rid of the bacterial infection in this tank, but I think it would be better just to simply reset the tank and start it over. But I have such beautiful plants here. It's a shame to reset this tank. Take a look at this. I have a nice carpeting plants over there, nice moss on the coconut shell, and we have a nice stem plants as well. And the fish quite happy here. And now, since I added CO2 here, these carpeting plants like HT Cuba start growing insane. I'm so pleased with this tank. I don't want to reset this. I'm gonna add a few shrimps later, maybe in 1 month. I'm gonna start with some calls. I'm not gonna put some expensive shrimps here and see how they're doing. If they're gonna be fine and well, then I'm gonna add more shrimps in this tank later. So now let's make a conclusion and talk about what can we do to avoid this from happening. The bacteria thrive in warm temperatures. That's why it's very important to keep the temperature under control. I think this is why it happened to me at the first place. After it happened, I bought a new aircon unit for my shrimp room to make my room nice and cool. Nice aircon, yes! It's just a cheap portable AC unit and I had to drill the hole in the wall for exhaust, but it does the job and I only need it for like 2-3 months in the summer, so I didn't want to spend a fortune. So now the temperature in all my tanks is about 21-22 degrees Celsius. That's what you want for your Caridinia shrimp. The second thing that you need to do is to make sure you avoid anything that can rot in your tank. Make sure you remove all uneaten food or dead plants. Another thing you must do to avoid introducing bacteria in your tank is to wash your hands before you even come close to your tanks. you can have millions of bacteria on your hands, which can be dangerous for your shrimp. So wash them before you do anything in your tanks, and avoid putting any decoration, leaves or cones without washing and boiling them first. So now let's quickly talk about what can you do in order to save your shrimp in case it's happening in your tank. It's not really many options other than moving shrimps into the healthy tank and hoping that the infection won't get into your healthy tank, like in my case. I would recommend quarantining your infected shrimp tank with the fish for at least 1 month, like you saw me doing before, but honestly a complete reset would work much better. I know you need to spend some money and time for doing this, but by the end of the day, it's gonna work for sure, 100%. When I had bacterial infection in one of my shrimp tanks for the very first time a few years back, I tried many things to fix it, but none of them really work. The first thing I try is to do the massive water change, and I change about 100% of water, but because bacteria mainly lives on the surface, it didn't really help. The second thing I try is to dose some hydrogen peroxide into the tank, and it also didn't help at all. And I also tried to put some active carbon and purigen in the filters, it also didn't work. And guys, if you had experience with bacterial infection in your shrimp tanks, drop me a comment and let me know how you deal with that. I would love to hear from you. So hopefully you got some useful information today about why your shrimp might die in your aquarium. Actually, I think I missed one point, is Hydra and Planaria. I think most of you know that Hydra and Planaria, they both bad for shrimp. So if you have any of them in your tank or both of them in your tank, so better to treat them as soon as possible. And the best way to do it is just to buy a no Planaria treatment. It's cheap and very effective, and also very safe for shrimp. I used it before without any problems. And now, if you want to know how to breed your shrimp successfully, then watch this video next. There is a lot of useful information in this video on how to keep your shrimp alive and what to do to make it breed a lot. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.